Hello, everyone. It's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel, tap the notification bell, and like this video. That helps me to keep making videos. I'd appreciate it majorly. So, the story over at the Daily Mail. This is a big story. Believe me, we're going to hear more about this. And it's all about the ambassador to Britain's ambassador to the United States, who's stationed in Washington, D.C. His name is Sir Kim DeRoche, and it's all about a number of different cables, communications that he, routinely communicates back to Britain about the state of affairs in the United States. But some of them have been leaked where he's talking very critically of the Trump administration. And in many cases, he's saying things that are very unflattering to the president and his people and his White House, big time. Now, there's a number of different cables that were leaked, and why they got leaked, and who leaked them remains to be seen. Although, I do think the fact that what's his name, Boris Johnson, is probably going to become the next prime minister of Britain, has something to do with this being leaked right now, and probably upon Boris Johnson becoming prime minister, this dude is probably not going to be ambassador to the United States anymore after that, probably, I would think. In fact, Nigel Farage, I believe, is already calling for him to step down or be removed, in light of this. This is, as this news has been coming out. And today is the first it's become news, to the best of my knowledge. So, but the cables are throughout the administration, and I mean the worst thing he said is the worst things that he has said about the Trump administration and President Trump is back early in the administration. But there's cables from then all the way up to pretty much the present day talking about the increased tensions between Iran and the United States, as well as Trump's most recent visit to the United Kingdom, which actually this individual went at great length to make sure it was a big success. Because even though he's very critical of the Trump administration, especially in the early days, like it's the summer of 2017, 150 days into the administration, that's where he says the worst things. But in spite of that, he understands that the critical relationship between Britain and the United Kingdom, and the idea of post-Brexit a trade deal between the U.S. and the U.K. being a very important thing. The Trump's visit to the United Kingdom, he wanted to make sure it was a big success, and it was. In fact, I think he accompanied Trump throughout the visit, at various stages, and accompanied him back, upon his return, as I understand it, if I remember the article properly. So, I mean, it's a super long article, and like I said, it goes over cables that are leaked from at various times. But the worst thing the worst things that were said were early in the administration when people were still, doubting Trump and his him being a brand new president, a very unorthodox president who still does things the same way that he did them when he first started, but it's still different, But I think Trump's enemies will use this in a big way. I'm just trying to give perspective that, people kind of still looked at Trump without a lot of respect early in his administration. And I'm very critical of Trump. If you watch my channel, you know that. So I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible that, this guy wasn't necessarily saying these same things, in the last 6 months. It was really in the beginning, when people were still adjusting to the way Trump is, So, yeah, if that makes sense. But anyways, let me just kind of go through a little bit of it and, and then leave the rest for, believe me, you're going to hear about this more tomorrow. This will be on the political, if you watch politics, this will be on the Sunday shows. Trump will be tweeting about it soon. He didn't yet, but he will be, believe me. I mean, some of the things that are said about him in the cables, irregardless of when it was said, they're not good. And, they're insulting. I mean, he even says at some point that, because from his contacts inside the White House, or from his own personal experience and his own personal observation that he observed somebody who's even though he was elected to be the leader of the free world, that's somebody that displays a certain level of insecurity, and things of that nature that are just fairly personal in nature and quite insulting. You'll see if I can get through it. Okay, so Sir Kim DeRoche, one of Britain's top diplomats, used secret cables and briefing notes to impugn Trump's character, warning London that the White House was uniquely dysfunctional and that the president's career could end in disgrace. And again, that's in 2017 when people just doubted Trump, which they have, for a long time. I sound like I'm defending Trump. If you watch me, I'm sort of sick of Trump. But it's just, this is back in time, I guarantee you, I don't think they're saying that anymore, even though I personally think he is going to lose in 2020, but not many other people necessarily believe that. His bombshell comments risk angering the notoriously thin-skinned president and undermining the UK's special relationship with America. In memos seen by the Mail on Sunday, following an unprecedented leak, Sir Kim described bitter conflicts within Trump's White House, verified by his own sources as knife fights, warns that Trump could have been indebted to dodgy Russians, claims that the president's economic policies could wreck the world trade system, says the scandal-hit presidency could crash and burn, and that we could be at the beginning of a downward spiral that leads to disgrace and downfall. Voices fears that Trump could still attack Iran. Now, I mean, if you read all those, and they are insulting or impugning, Trump's White House and so forth, but some of them are totally almost already out of date, like. Like when he's saying that that the presidency could crash and burn, and that we could all be at the beginning of a downward spiral that leads to disgrace and downfall. He's saying that in the summer of 2017, only 150 days into 6 months into the Trump presidency. We're 3 years into it now, and it hasn't happened. So that statement is almost meaningless, at this stage, if you follow me. Same thing with the indebtedness to dodgy Russians. That's prior to like the Mueller report being out there and all that. So I mean, some of these statements, they already have been proven wrong. So but nonetheless, he says things even worse than that are personally insulting to Trump. If I can hopefully find some of them in this article. It's super long. In one of the most sensitive documents, Sir Kim writes, "We don't really believe this administration is going to become substantially more normal, less dysfunctional, less unpredictable, less faction-riven, less diplomatically clumsy and inept." He also says that he doesn't think Trump's White House will ever look competent. In reference to Trump's ability to shrug off controversies in a life which has been mired in scandal, he says that the president may nonetheless emerge from the flames, battered but intact, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the final scenes of The Terminator. And again, these things where he's talking about this statement here, the one that was the most, most in one of the most sensitive documents, that's the one in 2017, when Trump had just began. Hate to belabor that point, but the leak is embarrassingly timed for the British government, coming just weeks after the Queen welcomed Trump and his family with a 41-gun salute and the state banquet at Buckingham Palace. In a memo sent after the visit, Sir Kim warned that while Trump and his team had been dazzled by the visit, and the UK might be flavor of the month. Trump's White House remained self-interested. Excuse me. This is still the land of America first. The Washington files span the period from 2017 to the present, covering everything from Trump's policy in the Middle East to his 2020 re-election plans. He thinks that Trump could likely win in 2020. He speaks of his most recent, his launching of his campaign in Orlando. And he said he actually sent somebody there to just observe it, and that it was, that Trump didn't say anything new, and that it's a mixture of fact and fiction, and that his most loyal fans were there, and they were very happy to hear everything that Trump said, and that he also comments that it's largely, almost all white, and so. In what is likely to be regarded as a patronizing passage in the cash, officials in London are told that in order to deal with Trump effectively, you need to make your point simple, even blunt. The most incendiary paper is a letter to National Security Advisor Sir Mark Sedwill, sent on June 22nd, 2017, 150 days into the Trump administration, copied to what Sir Kim describes as a strictly limited number of senior figures in Downing Street in the Foreign Office. The document sent ahead of National Security Council discussion on the UK-US relationship paints a damning picture of the president's personality and leadership style. It says media reports of vicious infighting and chaos inside the White House, dismissed by the Trump as fake news, are mostly true. And referring to allegations of collusion between the Trump camp and Russia, since largely disproved, the memo says the worst cannot be ruled out. Yeah, but since largely disproved, meaning it's sort of all been disproven, depending on where you are politically. The cache also includes diplomatic telegrams known as Diptel in Foreign Office jargon, updating Downing Street on political events in the U.S. They revealed details of highly sensitive negotiations over efforts to curb Iran's nuclear weapons program, as well as the disarray surrounding the president's handling of recent attacks on oil tankers in the Straits of Hormuz. One memo sent by Sir Kim on June 22nd refers to incoherent, chaotic U.S.-Iran policy, adding it's unlikely that U.S. policy on Iran is going to become more coherent at any time soon. This is a divided administration. The leak of diplomatic cables is extremely unusual and will raise new questions about morale in the civil service. There is mounting evidence that Brexit has politicized many mandarins, with officials who privately support Brexit accusing civil service of trying to stop the UK leaving the EU. This person, earlier in his career, had been a representative to the EU from the UK, something like that. But he's seen as being very pro EU and very anti-Brexit. So, that factors in as well. And Trump's speeches are full of false claims, and the White House will never look competent. Ambassador's withering views reveal scale of concern British government has about president. At his desk, in his splendid official residence in Washington, D.C., the British ambassador, Sir Kim DeRoche, was trying to help. Britain's National Security Advisor, Sir Mark Sedwill, asked him to put together some thoughts on the president's personality and leadership style, and he was compiling a briefing note. As seen from here, we don't really believe that this administration is going to be substantially more normal, less dysfunctional, less unpredictable, less faction-driven, less diplomatically clumsy and inept. That's the same statement I read before. It's repeated throughout the article. Sir Kim said Trump spends his days in the Oval Office asking his White House team, cabinet members, and senior Republicans for their opinions on the business of the moment. He therefore compiled a 3-point guide for how Britain's politicians and officials should handle the most unpredictable of presidents. His first suggestion was to flood the zone, which meant influencing as many of the president's key advisors as possible. Sir Kim said Trump spends his days in the Oval Office asking his White House team, cabinet members, and senior Republicans for their opinions on the business of the day, but crucially, the diplomat also highlighted how the president spends his evenings phoning his friends outside the administration, seeking reinforcement or a different take. Many of these friends have been cultivated by the British, Sir Kim boasted. It's important to flood the zone. You want as many as possible of those who Trump consults to give him the same answer, he wrote. So we need to be creative in using all the channels available to us through our relationships with the cabinet, the White House staff, and our contacts among his outside friends. So, it goes on and on. The diplomat's third pointer was to urge Britain's politicians and officials to use flattery and to pander to the president's ego when they come into contact with him. You need to start praising him for something that he's done recently, he advised. You need, whenever possible, to present them as wins for him. In comments which could be viewed as highly patronizing, Sir Kim also advised his bosses to make their points simple and even blunt, adding, as a senior White House advisor told me, there is no upside with this president in being subtle, let alone ambiguous. His stark assessment reveals the scale of concern at the highest levels in the British government about Trump. By the summer of 2017, the president had torn up the Paris Climate Change Accord, junked key international trade agreements, and launched military strikes against Syria. So that's pretty. I'm trying to pull out a few more that just give an idea of, I'll tell you right now, watch. I'm telling you, he calls them like insecure. It's not. In the confidential memo marked official sensitive, the UK's most important diplomat accused Trump of radiating insecurity, filling his speeches with false claims and invented statistics, achieving almost nothing in terms of domestic policy. He goes on to say that he hasn't really fulfilled any of his campaign policies, whether it's about building the wall, repeal and replace on Obamacare, his tax plan, even though he has put forth his tax cut, whether you think that's good or not. I mean, it's mostly the corporate tax cut was really the bulk of it, big time. And other things that basically he promised that hadn't been achieved, or at least that's what he was saying in some of these cables as well. All right, well, that's the story there. I guarantee you'll hear more about this tomorrow and in the coming days. And let's see if Trump has tweeted about it. I seriously doubt it. It's 1:22 in the morning, but it's not. And that's the story there, man. All right, thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.